Welcome to Unshakable with Human Design, the show dedicated to helping entrepreneurs use human design to shift from hustle to flow without sacrificing results. Come here to become an unshakable human and build an unshakable business according to your human design. I'm your host, Nicole. Hello and welcome to Unshakable with Human Design. I'm your host, Nicole, and we are here today with one of our celebrity human design readings. I am very excited about this one. I always love these. We do these about once a month where I dive into a celebrity chart. The whole point of that is to give you a real life example. So really showing you human design in action. Let's see it out in the world. I think that that's the best way, because my goal with this show is to help you understand how using your human design, that these are energies that we have present in us all the time. We were born with them, and how you can use this as a map for living outside of your shadow and living more in the light, living more in tune with your own intuition, your own instincts, and truly being the authentic version of you, the most authentic version of you that's possible. And so, but I understand that it can be difficult looking at this chart with all these shapes and colors and numbers and all of this stuff. There's so much to learn. And sometimes when it's explained like, oh, this gate means X, that can feel like, okay, great, that's great information, but I don't know what that means. My goal with these episodes where we dive into a celebrity chart is we're using celebrities because it's somebody we all know. We all have access to things to them and, you know, what we know about them in the public sphere. And then taking the chart and, you know, we have the benefit of hindsight where I'm looking at what we know and seeing maybe how that has shown up in their chart throughout their life, or how maybe it has influenced their decisions or influenced what we know about them. I really am careful about trying to take information that is not out of context. I try to take information that's directly from them, not what I've heard or even my opinions about anything that they have done. This is really just about saying, here is something that we all know that happened. It's not disputed. It is a fact. It's just, this is what happened, not what we think about what happened. And this is what we see in the chart that might be a source of that decision or a way that this is expressing itself. So again, just showing you how the design might be an action in their lives. So this is my hope, is that you take these readings, and by listening to them, you might hear something that she has that you also have and say, oh, I never thought of it that way. I never saw it that way. I'm just showing you the ways that these energies can be expressed and how they might be being expressed through these people. And today we are talking about a woman who I actually like very much. She is a bit of a lightning rod. I don't really totally understand why she gets the negative attention that she gets so much, but we're going to talk a little bit about that just from the facts side of it, of what has happened. But yeah, she gets a lot of attention whenever she does something. People have something to say about it. I personally find her to be quite delightful, inspiring. I think she's an inspiring woman. I think that she's a powerful woman, and I think that she does live pretty authentically to, at least what I see in her human design. She is an actress. She is a wellness brand pioneer. She really kind of kicked off the whole celebrity wellness brand thing. She's one of the first, and her name is Gwyneth Paltrow. And I'm super excited to bring you this reading because I think that she's a really interesting case study here. And just to give you a very quick lay of the land of who she is as far as her human design is concerned. She's a 2/4 sacral or pure generator. You can refer to them the same way. Her authority is sacral. Her type is generator. She has a small split. The gates that would bridge her split are 16 and 20. She is the right angle cross of service, and she has an open head center, an open ego or will center, and I should say completely open ego will, undefined head center, undefined solar plexus, and the rest of her centers are all defined. That is her human design, just the facts right there. And before we go any further, I do want to let you guys know that we have some really amazing things launching here in June. We have a new offer that will be launching in June. I'm very excited about this. This is something that people have been asking us for quite some time. I sat with it. My sacral responded. I sat with my emotional authority, passed it through, and it is such a hell yes that it is taking everything in me to not spew it all out and tell you all about it right now, but we have to leave a little bit up to suspense. So we do have a wait list, though, where you could be one of the first people to know about it. If you go to NicoleLano.me/waitlist, you could get on the wait list, be part of the first round of pricing, all of the fun bonuses, whatever we have going on, it will be going up to that list first. So if you would like to be on that list, please go join by going to NicoleLano.me/waitlist, or you could go to NicoleLano.me/podcast links, where you'll get all of the links to everything that we're doing. You can book a human design reading there. So if you're loving this celebrity reading and you hear how I dive into Gwyneth's chart and you'd like us to dive into your chart together, then you can book that reading on the podcast links page. And all of our free guides are there. Everything is there, and also the link to the waitlist. So all of our current links will always be on that page. So it's a great one to bookmark and save and visit randomly just throughout your day. Be like, oh, I wonder what Nicole's offering. You can pop over to that page and find out. All right. Now let's dive into Gwyneth Paltrow's chart, shall we? Like I said, she's a 2-4 sacral generator. She is the right angle cross of service. And what does that mean? Now, I have taken information. Really what I did was these are some things that we know. Obviously, we know she's an actress. We know that she won the Oscar when she was in like 1999. I listened to some of the podcast episodes from her Goop podcast, which is her podcast with her Goop brand. I also listened to a recent interview that she did on the Call Her Daddy podcast with on Spotify. She just did an interview over on the Call Her Daddy podcast over on Spotify. I listened to that interview and I took some pieces from that. So it's coming directly from her is really what I was trying to do. Trying to get information that came from her, not from me reading about her in various magazines or whatever. Ways that she described herself, ways that she described and chronicled her life. So with that, in that interview on the Call Her Daddy podcast, she was asked about her early life and how the Oscar shaped, how winning the Oscar when she was, I think she was 26 years old or something when she won the Oscar, how winning the Oscar at such a young age, how that shaped her and what that experience was like. And she responded that she really, like, looking back on that time, she had kind of like an identity crisis after winning that award. And there were lots of things about it. I think that was one of the first times she really felt how cruel people could be. She talks about how the British press gave her a lot of flack and made fun of her and kind of made her feel awful for crying during her acceptance speech. And, it was that first ping of being vulnerable and having people come back at you with not nice things to say. But she really went into how she felt like she realizes, it seems like now in hindsight, she's looking back on it and saying how driven she was, and how that being driven was really this overachiever sort of syndrome that she had. And looking back on it, she realizes that, it had a lot to do with her upbringing, and she was in no way really criticizing her parents. I think she was acknowledging that maybe some of it happened with either the best of intentions or completely unconsciously on their part. And just also realizing her father was a successful television producer. Her mother was a very successful and wonderful actress. And just growing up in a family where you're surrounded by these very, very talented people. Like, I think Steven Spielberg is a really good friend of her family's. I think he was a big influence in her life. There's something about him being her godfather. I do not know if that's true. But when you have people like this that are your role models in life, there's pressure. Even if no one's putting pressure on you directly, there must be pressure just in being in that situation. Now, I want to talk about her centers first. Her having the completely open ego will center. And I keep saying ego will because they mean the same thing. You can call it by those two names are interchangeable, whichever one suits you best. Now, this is the center of drive, determination, willpower. And it's the center of proving yourself when you have it open. It can feel like, so if you have it defined, that's just a natural thing that you do. No one has to tell you. You're just kind of born to go after things, go after what you want, and prove yourself. And you kind of have this natural mechanism inside of you, if it's in a healthy expression, to know what is healthy and what is not. How much is the right amount of achievement for you? And it can certainly get away from itself. But when it's open, you don't have that. You're not the source of that drive. So you pull it in from all around you. So the fact that her parents, maybe made her feel like achieving was something maybe to be proud of, maybe to make them proud. And this can be as simple as parents just being so happy when you do well and praising you for it, or pushing you to be better, and with the best intentions, just wanting you to reach your potential. But how easy it is for somebody, particularly a child with an open ego center, to pull that in an unhealthy way, where it becomes a wound, where it becomes something that where overachieving is the way that you operate, where achieving is the only way that you validate your own self-worth. When I get this thing, then I will be good enough. If I do this, if I reach this, if I excel at this, then I'll be good enough. And she talks about that. She talks about how that was something that once she reached the point of winning the Oscar, it was like, oh my God, there's nothing else to achieve now. Like, I kind of reached this pinnacle. Now what? Now who am I? And I think it's a really astute kind of realization to have, if she had it that young, certainly, to realize that was happening, and to realize what was at play, and to ask some bigger questions of herself of what she really wanted. And she talks about there were several life events in her life that caused her to kind of veer off that course a bit. Her father was very sick. Her father ended up passing away a few years later. But that open ego was something that she realized was unhealthy. That it was that operating out of this need to achieve was actually a wound. And this was something that was driving her not towards success, but toward burnout and not a good self-image of herself. So that's kind of how I saw that potentially at play in her design and in her way of operating. The open solar plexus. Now this one's funny because in the same episode, that Call Her Daddy interview, she was asked if there were what's the biggest misconception about her. And there's one about the business, but she was asked, what about personally? Are there any personal misconceptions? And she's like, I think that I'm cold. People seem to think that I'm really cold. And she's like, I don't think that I am. I think that I'm a pretty warm person, and I'm warm with the people I know, and I don't know, but people seem to think that I'm really cold. And number one, with an undefined solar plexus, there is kind of a naturally kind of calm, cool, collected sort of vibe if it's in its high expression. So she might just not be in a reactive state, which can be, highly sensitive. When you have the undefined solar plexus, it could be a highly sensitive person. And the fact that she's not, that she has that stillness, she also has gate 52 in her unconscious sun, which is the gate of stillness. And the fact that she's cultivated this, and that she might not be being forced into these reactive states of being overly sensitive about things, that coolness might come across to some as cold. So that was just something that I thought it could be a way of people misperceiving her. I don't even know, did I make up that word? But to have a misconception about her and what she really is versus what they're feeling from her, and that coolness being misconstrued. Now, her open head center, her undefined head center, with the undefined head is easily inspired. We're inspired by everything. And for her, she's got the only gate that she has active in there is the gate 61, and she has that unconsciously and consciously both in her north node. And I think this is interesting because this is the gate that it's inspired, and when it's inspired, it asks why. Why are we here? Why is this happening? What's the greater plan? Why? That bigger why, that spiritual why of mystery. of like that spiritual asking God, higher power. I do all see seeking in this gate. And I think she is a seeker. I think that this is me projecting a little bit, but she dives into all of the different spiritual modalities, and she seems very open to those things and kind of inspired by them to try different things. And I think that that's a high expression of this gate, as long as you don't get lost in it. And so I feel like we're at least seeing it, whatever that, what we feel from it. I think what we are seeing is that she does dive into this. She does dive into all of these spiritual things. She asks the healthy question, why? And I don't know much about whether she stays in the healthy expression of it, if she gets obsessive with it. That's not something that I know. That would be the low expression of it, would be to, they always say it's like kind of the madness. I don't think she seems mad at all. But does it become obsessed with the question why? I don't know that answer. But the high expression would be to ask in a healthy way that I don't know everything and I'm curious about it all. And I want to go deeper into these maybe more esoteric things. And I'm curious about them and how they can open me up. It's a very big picture gate. I start looking at the big picture and not just at the details. And I think that that's interesting because gate 61 is in her north node, which is sort of like where you're going, the trajectory of your life. It moves from the south node to the north node. And the south node is in gate 62, which is the gate of details. And the gate of details is like I want to test the waters. I want to know all of the little things, all of the details. I'm going to get down to the facts. And then gate 61, so it moves from that for her. It's moving from those details to the over 35 portion of her life, that second half of her life, to asking and looking at more of the bigger picture. Why are we here? What are the bigger themes and issues going on here? Maybe we don't have to be so bogged down in the details. Maybe it's not the details that are the most important thing. Now, regardless of the placement of these, I do think that she's sort of gate 62 and, the 1762 channel, which she does have active, stretching from which connects the ajna to the throat center. That's about explaining things in a way that people can understand. So it could be taking those bigger ideas, those bigger picture thoughts, ideas, opinions, and distilling them down into something that people can understand. I think that you're maybe seeing that in the work that she does. That's a potential there. And that's really what we're talking about here. These are potentials. They'll come and go. Do we spend more time in the higher expression or the lower expression? That's the game. But these things are going to appear, but they're always there. These are the things that drive us. So those are her open centers with a touch of her nodes there. And I want to move to another shift in her life, to her shift from acting to this wellness lifestyle brand that she has in Goop. And when she talked about that in that same interview, she was saying that, when she had her daughter Apple, she woke up and just saw her daughter's big blue eyes looking at her. And she was like, it was so visceral in me, like this is it. Like, I'm so in love with this baby. This is all I want to do right now. I don't want to go back to work. And, to me, it's if we're projecting this onto her human design chart, she had a visceral gut sacral response of yes to my baby and no to going back to work, no to leaving her, no to having that break in the connection. Now, she's fortunate enough to have those choices where she was set up enough where she could take lots of time off and really, really immerse herself in motherhood. And while she was there, but she was following that sacral guide. She wasn't thinking about her, and I want to paint the picture here. She wasn't operating out of that open ego that was saying, what's the next role? What's the next paycheck? Can you win another Oscar? The achieving, which would be unhealthy for her, which would be unnatural for her. What is natural, what is following strategy and authority for her would be the gut instinct. What is the gut telling you to do? And her gut was telling her, you should be home with this baby. Now, I'm not knocking anybody who can't do that because they're not financially set up like Gwyneth Paltrow to make those choices. But in a perfect world, we would be following these instincts. Her following that instinct led to her being home, led to her immersing herself in motherhood and her life at home. And during that time, she learned about, the toxicity in a lot of the personal care products that we put on our bodies. And she was appalled, and she was really upset about it because it has terrible effects on our health, potential terrible effects on our health. And clean beauty became kind of a bit of a crusade for her. It became something that she cared deeply about and wanted to share about. Now, what that started was, it kicks off into this whole goop part of her life. This whole lifestyle brand started out as a blog. I remember it from the beginning. I was on that first mailing list that she put out there. I'm one of the OGs on that. And I remember it was recommendations. It was things that she loved. It was recipes. It was stuff like that. She was sharing what she loved. And she was sharing the things that she was learning about what bothered her, what she felt needed to change. Now, this gets me into the reason I bring this up is because, sacral response brought her to this point in her life. So remember, sacrals, we just do what feels right, don't do what doesn't feel right. And those are the breadcrumbs on the trail that we're picking up. We never know where that decision will lead necessarily. We just know this is the right one for me to pick up right now. So we pick it up whenever possible. So she picked up the breadcrumb and stayed home. She picked up the breadcrumb and started to dig into the things that bothered her, that she wanted to know more about, so that she could change the way that she was living and the people around her. And she was doing the things that she loved. She was spending time with her kids. She was following her sacral guidance, her intuition, her version of her intuition. We all have it, right? That's your authority, is your intuition. So she picks up these breadcrumbs, and that leads her to learning all of this stuff and then starting this wellness brand, which started out just as like a blog. Now, this brings me to her right angle cross of service. Now, it's a right angle because she's a 2-4 profile, and service this is her incarnation cross. So this is the conscious sun, conscious earth, unconscious sun, unconscious earth gates that she has. Now, I'm going to do them in that order. Her personality sun, conscious sun, that's the right-hand side of the chart, is gate 18. It's the gate of correction. Then we have her conscious earth is the gate of opinions, gate 17. Her unconscious sun is gate 52, the gate of stillness. And then her unconscious earth is gate 58, the gate of joy. Basically, what we have here is these 4 gates. They make up your purpose. I'm going to use that term, but really what it is these are just going to be the strongest guiding forces in your life. This is where you will be pulled pretty naturally if you're not getting in the way, doing things out of what you think you should be doing, out of the way that your mind is driving you. Or, because what happens is when we're not following strategy and authority, we slip into that open space. We slip naturally into our shadows. So for her, what she talks about, like kind of her biggest pitfall was the overachieving. Not following what she truly felt was right, but doing it out of a need to achieve, to prove herself, to feel like she was worthy, like she was good, like she was proving herself to her family, to the world, whatever it was. That's what not following strategy and authority gets you. It gets you falling into that open space, what we call the not self. That's not you. That's not authentic. But when you are following strategy and authority, when you are following your natural guidance, you just start getting pulled toward these gates. You just start getting pulled toward this innate purpose that you have. Now, purpose, I'm careful about that word because it's not like her purpose necessarily. It's just going to be the things that show up for you, that somehow you have something to offer in this way. Now, hers is interesting because all of these are in really what we're talking about now. It's called the cross of service. So there is a being of service sort of feeling to this. The interesting thing about this cross, well, there's many interesting things, but one of the interesting things about this cross is it has the entire channel of judgment in it. That's gate 18 and gate 58, connecting the root center to the spleen. Now that is basically, it's the channel of judgment, and what judgment really means is it's the ability to, and the energy to be judging the things that you see in society, in the world, to see them for what's broken, to see them for what should be saved. It's about correction. That's really what this whole cross is about. It's about correction. And gate 18 is the gate of correction. That's really what it's about. And correction is, I see a better way to do this. For me, for you, for us, for everybody, for the world. And I have to share it. Collective energy, 1858, is collective energy. This is when we have collective energy in the chart. The keynote is sharing. It has to be shared. Like, we can't keep it to ourselves when we have that type of energy. It's like there's this inner need to share it. So her putting out a blog for things that she loves and things that she wants people to know and things that she's learned that she thinks will help other people is actually a really, really healthy expression and kind of a, yeah, of course, of this channel and ultimately this cross, these energies that she has. She's just getting pulled on the line of her destiny and in the line of her, the energy that she is here to express, the things that she kind of can't help herself but do. Now, 18 to 58, it's the channel of judgment. Yes, in the low frequency, it can be judgy. But in the high frequency, it is, I'm sharing this for you to know about. I'm sharing this so people know what's out there, so that they can make it better, so that we can make it better. Now, I think it's maybe a matter of opinion whether you find it judgy what she's doing, or if you find it to be in service to the greater good. That's really what we're looking at here. Now, that might be a matter of opinion. Now, her conscious earth is the gate of opinions. It's gate 17. Now, she's going to have some thoughts. She's going to have her opinions. Now, it is rooting down to that gate 62. She has the full channel there, which is about explaining things in a way that people understand, taking opinion and bringing it down and rooting it in fact. Now, according to her, whether you agree with it or not, according to her, they are pretty rigorous with their processes of making sure that what they share is rooted in fact. And if it is not, if it's something that's cutting edge, if it's something that's new, if it's something that isn't proven, they're very careful about making sure that they put that front and center in their reporting of it, that this is something that they're enjoying, this is something that they like, but the science isn't there, or this is very new. We just want to bring it to you to tell you what's new and on the cusp of maybe making it to the mainstream. So this is her cross here. I definitely see it playing out. Now, whether you believe or she believes that, how much time she's spending in the high frequency versus the low frequency of it, that is a matter of total opinion. And I don't want to get into that, but we see her sharing. She's sharing what she feels will help. And, her unconscious sun is gate 52. It's the gate of stillness, and it's the gate of focus. That is something that I think you see her trying to cultivate with the meditations, with these. I do think that she embodies a still quality, which maybe sometimes gets confused and misunderstood and misconstrued as being cold. The fact that she is still. Now, I'll throw my own opinion out here that I don't think people necessarily, all people in society, even women, love seeing women be strong and unemotional and being able to be still and comfortable in themselves. I think it's unnerving for some people. Now, that is my opinion. That's me. I'm calling that out. That is something that I feel. So maybe that's part of what unnerves people about her sometimes and gets some of those not so nice things said about her. Now, another thing that I want to bring up here, because this is sort of in the same vein with her bringing the things that she loves and bringing the things that, really the toxicity in the products, and noticing that clean beauty was necessary, that people did not know that the products that they were putting on their body could be harmful to them, and also giving them alternatives to those products and giving them something that is clean, that is healthy, that they can feel confident in. Now, she also has the channel of exploration, which is the 1034, connecting the sacral to the G center. And this is all about convictions. It's about acting on your convictions, acting on them, being them. And when you are being your convictions with this channel, other people change. You influence through, and in this case, it would be her influencing through being these convictions, by living by them, by sharing them ultimately through her other channels, but by showing up as an example of the convictions that she holds, she empowers and inspires others to do the same. I think we do see that. I think we see her moving on conviction in a lot of things, whether you think it's all of them or not, but certainly in this one that kind of fueled her business and kicked it off was her standing in conviction. And the last thing that I'll bring up is her 2-4 profile. So the 2 line is, we've talked about this on the show before in the projection field episode, but the 2-4 is really, it's the hermit opportunist, the hermit networker. This is really about the 2 line is very personal. The 2 line is kind of a natural. They're just naturally good at things. They are, it's known as the dancer in Gene Keys is one way that we look at it. They're just naturally good at stuff. And there is a projection field on the 2, and the 2 it's different than the 5-line projection field because people can see into the 2. Now, and they think they know what is good and bad about that person. And they do see into them. That doesn't necessarily mean that they are right. But it can feel, this has been my experience with a lot of people who I have worked with a 2-line, is that it can feel incredibly vulnerable. Because it's like you're naked out there. People are just looking at you and pulling these things out of you and saying, you should be this and you should be that and you'd be great at this, or you're terrible at this. It can go either way. And what that can cause is people to over hermit and hide from the projections because it feels very uncomfortable for them. And like it can just be a very vulnerable thing. But in the highest expression, they do their thing and people like it. When they dance like nobody is watching, when they're just doing their thing and they're not paying attention to anything that the outside world is saying, and they're only paying attention when they get called out for something, when someone says, or called up, when someone calls them up and says, I would like you to, I want your expertise here, will you help me with this? They can, through their strategy and authority, judge whether that is correct for them or not, whether they want to do that thing or not. And they're making that decision from themselves and from their own inner authority. And they don't care otherwise about what anyone else says, thinks, or does. You can take that as you like. And then the 4-line, her 4-line in the back, that's the networker. That is the person, they're here to have an influence on the people who are close to them. And one thing that I think is kind of indisputed is she does seem to have very long-lasting friendships, relationships. Relationships seem to be very important to her. Remember the whole conscious uncoupling thing that caused quite a stir, that she wanted to, remain a family with her ex-husband, was very controversial because she used a very apparently Gwyneth term, even though that wasn't her term. But the 4-line is about bonding. It's about bonds. It's about family, tribal connections, and however you define your tribe. And I think that you've really seen that in her life, in her world, where she has this circle of friends and they show up for her and they defend her and they seem to be incredibly loyal to her. And that leads me to believe that she's probably incredibly loyal to them, or she wouldn't be getting that type of response. However, I will say that 4 lines, people just stay. 4 lines, y'all keep people. You are the connectors. You are the ones that are just you just connect with people and they stay in your world. You don't lose anybody. Once you're in with these people. So that's just something that I definitely see that in her profile and what we've seen in her life. That seems to be true for her. Okay. Well, I think we'll leave it there. I think I've covered pretty much everything. I mean, there's so much more. Obviously, we can go into a chart for days and days and days and years if you're really working with it. But these are the highlights that I wanted to give you. These are things that I just thought really supported what we have seen out in the world and what we've seen from her, what I heard from her in that interview. So like I said, I really tried to take this straight from her mouth and not from other people's or my own projections of what I think. But I hope that you found this helpful. And if this inspires you to dive into your design and you would like to dive deeper with a human design reading, and then please book one with me. You can go to that NicoleLano.me/podcast links page, and you can book a reading right there. You can click over to the website and book a reading right there with me. We'll sit down for 90 minutes and we'll dive into your chart. And so I hope that you found this helpful. I hope that you found this interesting. I would love to know what you think about these episodes overall. Please take a little screenshot, share it on Instagram. Tell me what you thought about the episode. Tag me. I'm at Nicole Lano Official. And please leave a review. If you loved the show, subscribe. Leave a review for the show wherever you are listening to it. We would love to hear what you think about it, and we would love your continued support. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being part of this family, for being part of this show. I appreciate you to no end. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So now everybody, take this and go away and go be unshakable, everyone. I will see you in the next episode. If you love this episode and you're a fan of the show, please show us the love on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you're listening to the show and leave us a review. And if you'd like to connect with other entrepreneurs on their human design journey, join our free Facebook community, Human Design for Entrepreneurs. Go to NicoleLano.me/podcast links to join the group, book a human design reading with me, or access our free human design resources. We'll see you there.